Initial
Yeah.
thoughts, just your overall picture of what you've learned about the Black Jewish synagogue that we're going to be covering today.
Yeah. So in the short time that we spend time looking at it, it seems that they seem to be in the same thread. They remind me of emerging Jewish communities. And people talk about this often, the emerging Jewish community, whether it's mixed marriages in traditional Jewish communities where you have a whole influx of people that weren't raised in Judaism, or you have communities of people that maybe were disconnected from Judaism that are seeking to reconnect to it. And they don't seem to have a line of secession of tradition of embracing Judaism. So there seems to be a lot of reconstruction of what Judaism looks like in their own circles. So it looks different than what you would find in normative other Jewish communities that have a track record of Jewish tradition that's intact.
How do you know so much about what goes on in synagogues?
So my synagogue is a Messianic synagogue, but a lot of what we do is really traditional. I mean, we read from a Torah scroll. We have an Aron Kodesh, which is an ark in the front. I mean, we're trained in the traditional things. So that was my study. I did my undergrad in Jewish studies and religion studies. So that's a great passion of mine. I'm heavily immersed in rabbinic text and literature. So I'm all about that.
All right. And do you visit different congregations or more just have conversations as far as
Not as much, more conversation. Yeah, more conversations, more engaging with primary text.
All right, excellent, excellent. Okay, well, we're gonna do a little bit of that today. So here's the situation. We go way back in 2017. Okay, so this is something that happened about 7 years. Well, hold on, actually 2017. It's going on 7 years ago. It was in the fall. To the congregation we're going to be talking about. So this is to set the context here. So
a little bit on the outside, the shattered windows, the roof, a lot of charred along the roof as well. They've still got ladder trucks on scene. They are getting ready to clear out, and at that point, investigators will take over, and they are expected to be here for the next few hours to figure out what caused this fire. But I also want to show you some video from earlier this morning. This started around 9 o'clock this morning, and show you what it looked like with those flames coming out of the roof. A couple minutes ago, I spoke to Rabbi Baruch Yehuda, who tells me the building has been here since the 1700s. He tells me it has been a synagogue since about 1860. He has been a rabbi here for the last 10 years, and he tells me he is absolutely devastated to see this, and so is the congregation this morning. He tells me the Torahs, they were both salvaged, but it is still unclear what condition they are in right now. He's kind of going through the building with firefighters, working to see what else is still salvageable from the synagogue itself. We are told 2 firefighters had minor injuries. They were trapped. Rabbi, take a listen to what he had to say.
Well, that is absolutely my intention, to rebuild right here on this corner. If God give us the strength and the ability, right here on this corner, B'nai Dot will rise again, right here on this corner.
And he is going to be rebuilding with that Star of David you see right there. An absolute miracle, he tells me. The Star of David, the Magen David, still intact. Everything around it was burned up. At this point, though, again, firefighters still working to figure out exactly what started this fire. We're live in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. Mark Liverman, CBS 2 News.
Rabbi Eduardo, you ever been to Brooklyn?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, man. Lived in Brooklyn until I was 21 years old. I actually visited an Israelite congregation way back when. I don't think I ever told you this.
What?
But way back when, I visited an Israelite congregation a long time ago.
Well, how'd that
There
go?
was one on, I think it was on Linden Boulevard. It was actually an Orthodox synagogue. So there were a whole bunch of, it was a very predominantly Jewish neighborhood where I lived in East New York.
Mhm.
And a lot of the Jews actually moved out. So the Israelite Church bought the congregation, this Israelite congregation, and it was very much like had the structure of like a synagogue. So I was probably like 19 years old when I met them.
We got to figure out what
It was crazy.
what the name of that group was.
Yeah, for sure.
And so
it brought back memories today when I was watching the service today of this congregation.
this congregation experienced a real tragedy. It wasn't their fault. There was a contractor, 71-year-old man, and he used the wrong kind of torch. And so the fire started in the morning and just ripped through the building because, these structures back then, it's a lot of wood. And this building had been around since the 1700s. And when they went into Brooklyn to establish it, it was a group of Black Jewish folks from Harlem. They went in there to establish it, and they saw this boarded up synagogue and thought that's the perfect place. And so they bought it from the previous congregation, which I believe was Ashkenazi, but don't quote me on that. I don't know 100%. I got the name written down somewhere. But they bought it from them and have been there, I think, 70 years or so, something like that. Or at least the congregation itself. I think they purchased the building like maybe in the 70s, but I think they started their thing in the 50s. Along those lines, though, so we're talking about a group that's been around a while. And to those who are wondering, the group that we're covering, this group of Black Jewish practitioners, they came out of Wentworth Matthews' congregation. Now, I've reached out to the Rabbi Baruch Yehuda. I heard he is very kind and inviting, and so he may be interested at some point in sharing his thoughts. We understand this is a tragedy. Do you know much about? Do you hear much about sort of synagogues catching on fire, this kind of thing, yourself?
No, not as much. But what I do think is interesting is that they found a boarded up synagogue and they really jumped on top of it. And it's very appealing for someone who is seeking to have a Jewish congregation with a Jewish flavor to buy a building that was an Orthodox synagogue. There's a couple of benefits for that because the building already faces east. You could imagine doing construction in New York City and Brooklyn is going to be very expensive to rearrange the building, the orientation. That's very difficult. It's important in Judaism to have the building face the east. So when the congregant is praying and they're standing, they're facing east already while they're doing the prayers. So it would be beneficial for them to buy a building that was already a synagogue.
So you think the idea, it's important with the facing east, and so that kind of makes it a convenient transition.
For sure, 100%.
All right.
100%.
So there is one. I'm gonna show a few more. This is when they were trying to rebuild.
Welcome to One Brooklyn, presented by Brooklyn.
Hold on just a second here. Let me get some context here. So in this video right here, at the time, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Adams was a borough president. He was a borough president. New Yorkers understand what a borough president is. Everyone else, it's sort of a foreign concept. But at the time, the man who is now the mayor was a borough president. And since he was there in Brooklyn, it made sense after this happened that he went and tried to help raise money to rebuild for this congregation. And I hope people understand by now when we talk about practitioners of Black Judaism, clearly we are not talking about one-Westers, okay? I hope people are catching that. And clearly we are talking about people who are Tanakh only, okay? They're not thinking that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Christ or the Messiah. I think people should understand that as well. But Wentworth Matthew, that is where Edward Meredith Bibbins left out of that congregation that was established in 1919. And about 50 years later, Edward Meredith Bibbins started his school, which eventually became One West. So this all does relate to the practice of Black Judaism there in New York City. Before I play the Eric Adams video, which again, it's significant. This was at the time of the fire 6.5 years ago. Now he's a president. I'm sorry, not president. Now he's the mayor of New York City. Any comments before I play this, Eduardo?
No, that's good. That was a great setup.
Yeah, this is interesting. So this is his speech. The audio is a little quiet on this, but hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Welcome to One Brooklyn, presented by Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams. On this edition of One Brooklyn, Brooklyn Borough President Adams joins with members of a historic Bedford-Stuyvesant synagogue that suffered a devastating fire last month. There, they announced that thousands of dollars in donations had been raised to help in the rebuilding process. The borough president thanked local residents and businesses who are providing critical assistance during this holiday season and also shared information on how New Yorkers can get involved with the ongoing relief effort. They gathered outside the destroyed building beside a 5-foot-tall wooden menorah on the first day of Hanukkah.
It's clearly cold outside, but it is warm in the borough. and that warmth is being shared as we acknowledge the Hanukkah time of the year, where you see the outpouring of Brooklynites to show their support for this synagogue that is really part of the history of this building. The hammering you hear in the background is just the continuation of the restoration process that needs to take place. And when you think about parts of this building has been around since the 18th century, it is a very significant part of the history here in Brooklyn. And so we want to thank the members who are here of the B'nai Adath Kol Beth Israel Synagogue, and all the supporters in Brooklyn, and what has been done since the fire that really took their place of worship temporarily from them. But just as the building is strong, the people are strong, the spirit and energy in Brooklyn is strong as we show our support. To date, when we responded here during the fire and put out the call to the rabbi and the members of this synagogue, we were able to raise over $20,000 on the GoFundMe page with 150 contributors. And we're going to give a special thanks to Home Depot, Express Lumber, Midwood Lumber, for giving their support as well, because part of the process is not only the monetary funds, but some of the material that is needed, and they are assisting with the material. And so we're here with this historic menorah to really signify how the recovery and revitalization of this synagogue is going to take place in the next couple of months to come. And so we want to thank all those Brooklynites that responded to our call and ask them to continue to donate to the GoFundMe.com/help, BNAIADATH. That's GoFundMe.com/help, BNAIADATH. It's a long process during this time of the renovation that's taking place, but it really shows what's great about this borough. No matter how cold it may seem when a fire of this magnitude guts a historical location that has parts of it since the 18th century, the warmth of this borough has really wrapped around the members of this synagogue, and the calls that we receive for those who want to help and to ensure the rebuilding of this important part of Brooklyn's historical religious dynasty here in the borough of Brooklyn. Oftentimes we say that Brooklyn is the borough of churches, but it's also the borough of synagogue, the borough of mosque, and the borough of faith-based institutions. We pray together, we stay together, we assist each other during these difficult times of needs. And I'm really proud of the response of Brooklynites as we move forward with the recovery process of this synagogue. We want to now hear from the rabbi.
All right, so I know that was sort of a longer clip. The reason why I wanted to make sure we play that is because you got the person who is now the mayor of New York City that was there at this event. That means the mayor of New York City, in some form or fashion, knows who this congregation is. There's about 200 people, my understanding there. Now, again, this is back in 2017, a month after the fire. The reason why we're covering this today, though, is they were not able to fully raise the funds. And so last week, about 11 days ago or so, the building is now being demolished. And so it's quite a blow, as you could imagine, to the group there. And the reason why I'm showing this is to show the diversity of Hebrew Israelism. So Hebrew Israelism goes back a while. And this particular congregation in Brooklyn branched out of Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthews' group that was in Harlem. And so this is historic, not just to Brooklyn and all of that, but also sort of within the scope of what Hebrew Israelism is. Now, usually researchers refer to this, they'll say something like Black Judaism. And that's kind of the common way it'll be described, as Black Judaism, because that's what they're practicing. However, they're not exactly aligned with the Orthodox in that. So comment a little bit on that and what you heard there. And did you ever know Eric Adams is the. Did you even realize he was the borough president of Brooklyn back in the day?
No, not at all. I mean, I've been out of New York for a while now, so no, I didn't know that. But I missed a little bit of what you said because I got dropped out for a second. It kicked me off. I don't know why. Did you see that?
Good. Yeah, you were real quick. You weren't gone too long
Yeah.
though. Just kind of discussing the fact that it's significant that he knows who they are, and he's now the mayor of New York City, and it's kind of a fascinating.
And they're being
thing.
afforded normative status, right? Which is fascinating. You can have Ashkenazic Jews who are Messianic, who don't always get that same sort of treatment as being within. It's like they're getting the arm of fellowship of normative Judaism, right? Being accepted as normative. And so the senior rabbi of my synagogue may not get the same kind of treatment as an Ashkenazic Jewish person with ketubot, marriage certificates, being circumcised on the 8th day by others in places of politics because of being Messianic, but they're still being accepted as normative by government officials. That is fascinating. Yeah,
it is fascinating. And, I think one reason is you think about the building, parts of the building have been around since the 18th century. That's significant. Yeah. And the fact that the congregation itself, stems from a congregation that goes back to the beginning of the 20th century in Harlem, but they themselves there, and as they used to say, do or die Bed-Stuy, they've been around since the mid 20th century. So there's history there. So I bring this out. I know this is not going to be the hottest show I've ever done or anything like that, as far as people, tuning in and all that. But the thing is, I think it's important for people to kind of get a sense of this history and the larger scope and scale of these issues when we talk about Hebrew Israelism, and kind of understand that. So I have another couple clips I'm going to play. Go ahead, though, brother.
Before you show them, I just want to show this. So Rabbi Mark Shulman, who's the senior rabbi of my congregation, Ashkenazic rabbi, brought up in Orthodox Judaism. He serves as a Messianic Jewish chaplain in the Air Force.
Okay.
And he actually had some static with the clergy that were the Orthodox rabbis because he wore the tablets. Now, mind you, he's a Messianic rabbi. And they didn't want him to wear the tablets because that was supposed to be a Jewish symbol, and they viewed him as outside of Judaism. And now there's this whole big thing going on of the Messianic Jews having to have their own symbol in the Air Force and in the chaplaincy to differentiate from them. And for these black Jews to get the right hand of fellowship, right, is really interesting. It's a big deal. It's not a small thing, right? To be viewed as normative and to be called a synagogue even on the news, So, and when we get into their services, we'll see more about some of the differences that they actually do have that would never happen in an Orthodox congregation.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the question of acceptance with practitioners of Black Judaism is it's a touchy subject in a lot of ways. They would definitely say they were not very accepted, especially in the beginning. And I think that that's pretty much true. And the Orthodox, my understanding in general, Eduardo, and you would already probably know and understand this, are a little slower to have open arms to what they may view as upstarts. The Reform, though, the Reform branch of Judaism, they're a lot more, willing to kind of open their arms. And in fact, one of the fundraisers that this group did, I believe, was with a group of what it looked like Reformed Jewish practitioners, meaning they were trying to help raise funds. Now, they raised $20,000 is my understanding, but they needed $4.5 million for the proper repairs for this. And, that didn't happen. And so that's why it's in the process of getting demolished, it's in the news there in New York. So we play the old news, but pretty soon I'm going to play here the new news as well. And I would say, they've been around a while, so they've got a little more acceptance from certain factions, but other factions I don't think would ever fully accept, But I guess probably, to your point, more so than Messianic Jewish folks. Shout out to Yondell, my man. Alan, how you doing? It's very good to see you, brother. Keep the program going. I hope today is an interesting program for you today. This is, a little educational joint, and hopefully people appreciate it. All right, let's go back to this right here. And play oh, that's the wrong. I keep on doing that. That's the Dow clip. Sorry, guys. I'm playing the wrong clip. Okay. Here's another clip, though.
Demolition is underway at an historic synagogue in Bedford-Stuyvesant. fire destroyed it in 2017, but the faith leaders say the congregation still thrives.
In the spirit of the Hebrew people, we survived.
Rabbi Baruch Yehuda says the roughly 200 members of B'nai Adath Kol Beth Yisrael congregation have worshipped since the fire in borrowed spaces, including in a private home.
We have families that have depended on us for years and throughout the generations.
This temple was home to the oldest Black Jewish congregation in Brooklyn. Originally founded in 1954, B'nai...
That's important right there. So we're talking about the oldest Black Jewish congregation in Brooklyn, and they're founded again in 1954. And they have Torah scrolls there. What's the outside cover of the Torah scrolls called? What's that name? Does it have a name?
So it's like a mantle. It's a we normally just call it a mantle. I'm sure it has an exact name in Hebrew. So on the top of it are called the rimonim. They don't have any rimonim on there, which is interesting. On top of the poles, you would basically that when you move around, it makes noise. Some of them are like in shapes of pomegranate bells, and then they have the yod for the pointer on the top.
I see the yod.
So
I see the yod.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
But this looks fairly standard though, right? I don't.
This is standard Ashkenazic practice. So like if they're coming from Africa, Yemen, Morocco, I mean these types of areas, their scrolls basically stand up in cases. So Sephardic Yemenite Torah scrolls, they go in cases and they actually stand up. They don't have what's called the Eitz Chaim, which means tree of life, which are on the poles. That's really an Ashkenazic European way of like having the scroll.
Yeah.
So
what about
some of the other scrolls do that?
What about the style of dress? Any comment on that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. They have the talit. I know that many wear large hats like these. They're a little bit different, but I'm not familiar with those in my community. But they do have. It seems like the normal stripes of talits, which are the prayer shawls. They seem to have that around them, which is interesting. So this is probably in front of the ark because it looks like they have the parachet in front of it, which is like the curtain.
Oh, okay. When you say the ark in relation to a synagogue, can you explain that to the audience, though, brother?
So the ark is what the Torah goes into. So behind them would sort of be facing east, if that's where they have their Torah scroll at.
All right, and
it's hard to tell with the angle that it's at.
I got you. The previous picture. Notice anything about that picture? I mean, it's not a game. I'm just asking if you notice anything. Just anything you would want to point out to the audience.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just interesting. I mean, this almost looks like a wedding.
Well, it might be.
V'kol kala, and the voice of the bride. V'kol kala, and the voice of the bride.
Oh, that's what it says on the top?
V'kol kala, that's what it looks like to me. V'kol kala.
Well,
it looks like the voice of the bride.
All right. Well, I'll continue watching this clip from Spectrum News, and you guys can see why we want Eduardo on. Listen. The stuff I choose to do is obscure. I'm covering a historic Black Jewish synagogue in Brooklyn. Honestly, some of the stuff Eduardo chooses to do might even be more obscure. So my point by saying that is he needs your support and help, not because, he's hard up. He has great support system there in PA, from what I understand, and a lot of blessings, and he runs a very professional channel with a lot of entertainment value too and educational value. But I just encourage you guys to definitely support content creators, as they call them now, like Eduardo, because he does great work and really presents an invaluable contribution to the discussion of apologetics online in relationship to this. You really can't get commentary like this just anywhere that he is presenting. So great appreciation for that. White Lily, who gave a super chat, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Thank you very much for the super chat. Says, stop accidentally playing the polyamory song. I'll get restuck in my head, and I'll definitely use it as a conversation starter work. So I don't know if you know, when I was playing the wrong clip a few times when I was going to the video. That's from a previous program where we were covering Charles Dow and Straightway Truth Ministries. And someone had recently done a parody song that's called Polyamory. And it's really funny. And so that's what she's referring to. So that just so know, if you're watching and you're from the congregation, just know that has nothing to do with you. That's a previous group that I was covering, and I accidentally played the video, so I apologize for that. I'll do my best, White Lily, but thank you for the super chat and the support and all that. Thank you very much. All right, continuing on with this clip here.
Oldest black Jewish congregation in Brooklyn. Originally founded in 1954, B'nai Adath occupied several spaces before moving to Green Street 58 years ago. But after that fire caused by a contractor repairing the roof, the city's buildings department issued a full vacate order.
You have to have faith. Doesn't matter what you believe in, you have to have faith. That's why we're here. You gotta believe in something important, you know, and this is important.
Synagogue leadership has struggled to raise the necessary funds to rebuild the temple, leading to the city's move to tear it down. In a statement, a spokesperson for the buildings department said, DOB inspections conducted last week determined that additional sections of the roof and the exterior south-facing wall had collapsed as well. DOB engineers determined that there is an imminent risk for further collapse at the building. City contractors say they estimate the demolition process will take 2 to 3 weeks.
The whole story of the Israelite people is one of triumph and setback.
Rabbi Yehuda says he looks to the scripture and scrolls, which fire crews salvaged from the fire, as inspiration, still hopeful.
We anticipate being right back on this corner, continue to do what Hebrew people do.
Now working with an architectural firm on plans to one day redevelop the site. In Bedford-Stuyvesant, Rebecca Greenberg, New York 1.
That was pretty interesting. I appreciated hearing his perspective, too, on the situation. And again, we can only imagine, how painful this must all be for them. This is not easy, this whole situation. I apologize to anyone watching this from the congregation for the maybe trauma it might bring up. But, this is in the news. This is just happening, this situation. Any comment on that video, my friend?
Yeah, that's not a small congregation to be building up. I mean, that would cost a lot of money inside of New York City to build a sanctuary that looks like that. And to have a synagogue is very expensive. I mean, the Torah scrolls alone can be worth, $10, $20, $30,000 a piece, right? $40 to $50, $60 just for a new one, right? For it to be kosher, if they're following the kosher standard, it could be $2,000, $3,000 just to get some letters filled in because they can't have any broken letters. So it just shows you there is a strength in the community to be able to even have Torah scrolls and things like that. I mean, there are plenty of Messianic congregations, even normative Jewish congregations, that don't always get to have a Torah scroll every single Shabbat. Why? Because it just is an expensive item to have. They're coming out with 2 of them, right? That shows that they do have some strength and backing and support in the community that's knit together, that's invested in doing these things and having these things. So it's interesting. We're not talking about a weak congregation.
Yeah, and it's interesting, if you listen, he's obviously aligning himself directly as ancestors, the folks who were in the Torah and Tanakh itself, but he's using that as inspiration for the story. And you can kind of hear that, this affects the worldview and the story that groups like this tell about each other. Because let's say this was a church in Brooklyn. Most likely it would be a different approach to deal with the tragedy. You see what I'm saying? Than what Rabbi Baruch Yehuda was saying. And I should point out to everyone again, sometimes people think, oh, Hebrew Israelites, fake Hebrew. This congregation is using standard Hebrew. Now we're going to get into some differences here in a second when we look at the Siddur, but this is not Lashon Kodash. Baruch Yehuda is you could find an Ashkenazi rabbi with that name, hypothetically, I would imagine, right? Yeah. What I'm saying? I just want to bring that out. But what happened is, they did not get the money raised in time, and apparently it was creating some problems there with the situation, and it had to be demolished. And so that's what's going on. And again, we understand it'd be very painful. She showed clips of the fire back then. That is the rabbi himself. I would hope to speak to him perhaps one day. I've heard only good things about him. And just one other picture I didn't get your commentary on. And by the way, my understanding is they are kosher, because I watched some of their live Q&A, and it was a lot of questions about kosher stuff, especially during Passover. There, I think they might have grape juice or wine, because I saw one of the questions was about that, and someone was asking why they did that. I don't know, comment on what this looks like?
This looks like either an Erev Shabbat Kedusha, where they're doing this and the entering in of Friday night, and they're wearing talits, which is also interesting, right? If it is a Friday night thing, it could be them, doing Passover also, and they're wearing talits also. Everybody seems to have a cup of grape juice. If that's a stack of matzah in the middle, um, I'm wondering if they have a Seder plate on the other side. It'd be nice to have the whole table, right? If we did, maybe he's leading a Passover Seder there. It's hard to tell. But it seems like they're opening up the books. If we could see the front of this book in a high definition picture, that would be good. But it's kind of hard to tell. It could be a Haggadah or it could be their Siddur, because the one you sent me, it seems they print some of their own material to use. So could it be their own Siddur, which is a prayer book on Friday night, yet they're wearing talits, prayer shawls? Conservative synagogues do that as well. Orthodox synagogues won't wear the larger prayer shawls at nighttime services, except on high holy days.
So these little differences, you're able to tell some of the influence and stuff, which I think is very interesting. And again, that's why I appreciate your commentary.
Yeah. And the other thing about the name too, when I think about emerging Jewish communities, usually when Jewish communities have a continuity, a lot of times there is, when the Jewish identity is strong, right? Very strong. There isn't a problem with having a rabbi with a non-Hebrew name. So we have rabbis in rabbinic literature and the rabbinic text. We have like Rabbi Alexander. Alexander's not a Hebrew name, right?
Right.
But in the rabbinic text, we have a Rabbi Alexander who is Jewish and he's part of the community. When you look at the Sephardic communities, there were rabbis and founders of the congregations that have Spanish names just like everybody else. The need to really hinge yourself back into a Hebrew name is a strong claim of identity that is shaken, right? It's not to be offensive, but it is a way to kind of hinge ourselves back in the identity intensely. This would be normative for communities to do, to change their names and take on these Hebrew names, and even to give their children names that are more Hebrew, to really pass that strength of Jewish Hebrew Black Jew identity on to their children. Right. So seems something intentional. If we have rabbis in the Talmud who use Greek names, if you're Jewish, then what's the problem with using your regular African name or Spanish name or Greek name or whatever, right? It shouldn't be an issue.
Right. Yeah, I think it is part of the reclamation process, like you were saying. There you can see back in 2017, Eduardo, where the firefighters were able to save the Torah scrolls.
Yeah.
I imagine that was high priority to the congregation.
100%. And there's things about Jewish law about, saving the parchments that are written with the divine name Yod He Vav He on them, that you should be going in and saving them. It's a high priority to go in and do that. And specifically the specific examples in rabbinic texts are, if a building is on fire, do you go in and save the scroll, right? And the idea is that, you would go in and save the scroll if you can. Is
a Gentile allowed to touch like this in this instance, or is it kind of like, is there something to that?
I don't know. The Jewish law gets so entangled up on handling that stuff, right? I'm sure they would say, hey, if he's saving it, it's not an issue, right? It's not ritualistic in the process, so.
I'd imagine so, yeah. But so there it is, kind of a close up to it. Yeah. I kind of
those aren't cheap, man. Those aren't cheap.
I wonder if they had them custom made, or if they had bought this from another congregation.
So typically, when you go to order these type of mantles, they have some pre-made. Sometimes Torah scroll dimensions are different. There's a range of lines that a Torah scroll can be written on in the Ashkenazic tradition. Certain amount of lines. So depending upon the lines and the dimensions, the centimeters, you would have to order it and get it made for it, or standard. So, you could have a certain amount of lines, but the letters are so big, right? So you can have Torah scrolls that are a lot of different sizes. So it's not like just go shop and pick one up. They're in New York City, so maybe they have access to more, but you don't just walk in and grab one all the time.
Yeah, they're not just sitting on the shelf. There you can see the new building they were hoping to work on. And they were talking about making, this is what their plan and hope was. And they wanted to do a lot more, I think, than sort of just have a synagogue. And I believe that is the proposed inside. Any comments on that?
Well, they probably want to retain where that star was. That was on the outside. That's probably why they put that there. And then, so that's probably facing east on that side of the building. What's interesting to me is that I don't see mechitza in the congregation, right? Which would be like the divider between male and female. Typically in Jewish law, male and female don't sit next to each other. It could be that they'll put the woman in the top area, which some congregations do, like in the balcony, and then the men will be down in the bottom. But typically, if it's one level, sometimes they'll split them off. Men will be on one side, women on the other. But it seems like, I don't see that there. So maybe the women go on top, or maybe they have mixed seatings.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so let me play this clip as well. This one is very recent.
And before you do that,
Yeah.
let me say something about it. And people might be saying, well, what's important? Why are you even mentioning that? Who cares about that? It's important because we're seeing where they're drawing their lines on and who they're drawing their influence from, and making decisions about how they determine to walk in their Black Judaism, right?
Right.
And if they're deciding to have a mechitza, which is a separator, or not, that's a clear claim of are we aligning with Orthodoxy or conservative Judaism? I mean, that's a big a marker of difference. It's not a small thing within Judaism to do that. I think you're muted.
You're right, I am. This video I'm about to play from CBS New York is 12 days ago. So this is in the news recently. If you're in Brooklyn, you might know about it. If you're in New York City and pay attention to this kind of stuff, you might know about it. And so this is 12 days ago. Almost 4,000 people have watched it there. So there's, and there's an interest to some extent about this. And I want to, oops, I made that too large, but I want to play this video as well. And then actually I'm going to play some teachings and things like that. But here we go with
The
that.
oldest and largest Black Jewish congregations in the country is mourning the demolition of their historic synagogue after the building in Bed-Stuy was deemed a public hazard. CBS 2's Hannah Klieger covers Brooklyn and shows us how the community is looking to rebuild.
The sight of demolition crews pulling down this historic sanctuary is hard to watch for Rabbi Baruch Yehuda.
We've run soup kitchens for years and clothing drives, and we drive around and cover up people on the street.
His community has been worshiping from the Green Avenue Temple since 1967. In 2017, the building suffered a major fire. Worshippers were left without a permanent home.
We would rotate. Each month we would visit a different place. We even ended up in the rabbi's house doing services until we got to the space that we're renting now.
The building has been unusable since the fire, and the congregation knew it would eventually have to be torn down. But the Department of Buildings says it issued an emergency declaration to demolish after one of the walls collapsed and started leaning on a neighboring structure. Demolition began late last month. They own the land and will have to pay the city back for the demo. Leaders at B'nai Adath Kol Beth Yisrael say the site reinforces their desire to return.
We are planning to put the synagogue back here with some housing and hopefully some community components that will make our mission here even better than it was before.
Their lawyer, Susan Zinder, says worshipers are now speaking with an architect and developers.
The congregation always wanted to do community housing for this community. It didn't want to be the source of gentrification.
The mayor recently announced plans to help religious institutions build affordable housing. It's the end of an era for hundreds of worshipers who prayed in the building, but in some ways, it's also the first step towards their new spiritual home. In Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, Hannah Klieger, CBS 2 News.
Real quick, I wanted to pause on that. I don't know if you're able to see that. If you're able to see that there, like some kind of a founding stone there.
Yeah, that's just the name. B'nai Adath Kol Beit Yisrael. It's just their congregation name.
What's the name mean?
Children of the congregation of the B'nai Adath Kol Beit Yisrael of the house of Israel.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like that part of the building may have been saved. There was some other interesting footage in there, I thought. Right here, can you explain people what's going on there? This is something I do know, by the way. But if you explain to people what this is.
Yeah, so this seems to me to be a high holy day service because they're wearing all white. So it's probably, Yom Kippur or something like that. The Day of Atonement. He has his hands separated like this. He's doing the Aaronic benediction. Part of the tradition is that God will pass through the hands as you have them separated. And he's doing that blessing, the priestly blessing over the people.
For the Star Trek fans, this is where Spock, Leonard Nimoy, who's Jewish, got it from. He just kind of changed it around, live long and prosper.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So these are pictures of the congregation when it was, active. A lot of people there.
Yeah,
It
and
does
look like they're
look like
separating men.
yeah. I was about to comment. It does look like the men are sitting on one side and the women are on another.
Yep.
But there's
Yep.
not a divider. But they are doing that. So this is and there's children present.
Yeah. And they're
with-
wearing white, so that this is a high holy day service for sure.
Yeah, my guess is the pictures would come from when there's higher attendance, as well. Which would make sense.
Do you know if they refer to their congregation as a temple?
I had seen that somewhere. I don't know if they specifically called this one, but I remember in some of the videos I was watching that somebody I
'Cause
thought
I know
did.
the news. Yeah, because the news lady just called it a temple, but I want to know if they call it a temple.
I thought
That
I remember hearing that, but I don't know.
Yeah, because it's if you refer to your congregation as a temple, this is really a reform thing. The idea of taking your eyes off of Jerusalem, off of Israel, where the temple is, and having a temple here in your local community, that's an intentional move.
Right.
To kind of distance yourself from the necessity of the rebuilding of the temple and sort of saying, hey, our local congregation, I was going to say ecclesia, our local congregation can be a temple here and our praise and worship can be sacrifices. That's an intentional move and departure, which I think links what we're going to see in their Siddur as well.
No doubt. All right. Just couple. I want to play a little clip of the rabbi actually preaching. This is kind of a unique thing they made. They made a short. So I want to play this short. This is about the Ten Commandments, the Decalogue here, and this one particularly right here. It looks like it's about honoring your father and mother, your parents. So this is a very short clip of the style of homily you would get there, although I don't think they'd use that term.
He doesn't like when you disrespect your parents. It doesn't matter what reason you give. It doesn't matter, well, my mother did. So what? But find a way to respect your mother and your father, because that's what God demands. And you don't have, and there's no, I need for you to know there's no conversation that you're going to go to God with about why you feel you must disrespect your mother or your father. There's no conversation that you're going to give to God as to why it's okay that you violate Shabbat. He doesn't like when you disrespect your...
I apologize for the music. That's on their end. They had it pretty loud, and so some people might be tripping off that. We've got my man, Old School Saint, says, born and bred in Bed-Stuy. Sad to learn of this. But it looks like there he's talking about the Ten Commandments, because he also said you can't give I think he said you can't give an excuse to the Most High for why you'd violate Shabbat. I think he said that as well in the conversation. But that's sort of a flavor of how a lot of the... you're not going to call them sermons. What am I going to call them?
They call them sermons. I mean, this sermon.
Oh, really?
Josh's Shior lessons. Yeah. His sermons also.
All right. Okay. You can also see him himself doing the Aaronic blessing there. I mean, that's kind of...
What's interesting, though, is that like in traditional rabbinic Judaism, my understanding is that only priests, Kohanim, can do the priestly blessing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it depends where they line up with, right? I mean, in Messianic congregations, I mean, we let others do it that are congregational leaders, but the idea is that this is how the priests bless the children of Israel. So do they view themselves as descendants of priestly Jews, right? The priestly clan. Maybe, I don't know, but.
No doubt. Blue is whining and complaining. Historic synagogue is not enough for vocab. You got to play the race card and call them black. Sad, dude. Blue in the news. That's how it's referred to as. And also, the congregants are actually black, so it is what it is. I'm sorry that bothers you, but not really.
Yeah.
All right, let's listen to some of the lessons here from Baruch Yehuda here. Let me see here.
And it is not your job. Listen to me. It is not your job to go out and chastise people because they haven't come to the knowledge of Torah yet. It is not for us to make fun of people who haven't been blessed to know God yet. It's not for us to poke at people, and that's not our function. You are supposed to be priests to the people as assigned by the living God. I don't care who they are. They're supposed to be happy to see you coming. Whether they be Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, they're supposed to be happy to see you coming. You are supposed to be the best citizen in any society that exists.
Now I'm going to play more of this clip, but the reason why I specifically wanted to play this, this is not some show where I'm like, congregation exposed. I want people to see some of the differences in approach within Hebrew Israelism. So there is sort of the motif of basically being a light to the world or a light to the nations, that kind of motif. Notice he said, no matter who it is, they should be happy to see you coming. You should be the best citizen of what you can be. And this is a recent teaching because you notice you also have the new designs behind him, the vision casting there drawn up by the law firm. And notice he's saying your job's not to chastise or make fun of people. Well, obviously, One Westers who came out of Edward Meredith Bibbin's breakaway at One West that have the same parent in the sense of Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew there, 1919 Commandment Keepers. This group has the same parent congregation. Although this was officially sanctioned, Edward Meredith Bibbin's was not. They just left. You see what I'm saying, everybody? But obviously, the One Westers who continued on with Bibbin's street activities don't share the same view about not chastising and mocking people and being the best citizen no matter who you're dealing with, right? I thought that was important for people to see. I think you could get something like this out of if you went to a conservative Jewish congregation, right? Something very similar, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these are directly in the words of the Torah, right? Being a mamlechet kohanim, a kingdom of priests, right? Loving your neighbor as yourself. I mean, all these things are directly embedded within the Torah, right? And it's what we should be hearing. I mean, there's a bunch of conservative congregations that I'll listen to online that have the same kind of message, right? Loving people, caring for people, being a light to people, showing love and kindness. I mean, you hear that often.
Yeah,
and like you said they're probably in conversation with some progressive Jewish movement. And I don't mean it like totally on the left side, but those that may be conservative in the Jewish sense, those that even might lean, even though they may still be standoffish, they're definitely having conversations with those communities.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. The iPad went away, so let me bring it back up, and I'm gonna have to get it going again. Let's see if we can hear this. Why did it do that? Let's see.
Might have gone to sleep.
Looks
a lot of times we think that we're supposed to be anti-society. You didn't see that in the book of God. I know don't get me wrong. I know it's past the time, but just listen to this real quick. I know we've been downtrodden and beaten down, but God didn't tell us to do that. Our thought processes, because of where we are, Daniel, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, Nehemiah, all them people were a part of the governments under which they were captives. And God used them to bless the people in the captivity. You're supposed to be the best citizen in every community ever. We bless the name of the living God. Please stand as we will close out this portion of our day, thanking the Most High God.
So you see they're kind of recognizing historic injustice against the community there, obviously making a parallel, but to them it's not a parallel, it's a literal one-to-one with the story of the Jewish people in captivity. But there you see, this idea of being the best citizen. He brought up Daniel. I don't know if you guys caught the name. He pronounced it in Hebrew. And the three Hebrew boys that are sometimes known by their non-Hebrew names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, bringing them up and using that as a parallel. Again, this is not something you would hear at a One West story, One West service. You'd hear much more hostility towards the larger outside world and whatnot. And so kind of a fascinating take, it's not as anti, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and his idea, he's talking about galut, which is really exile, right? And he's not saying something that wouldn't be said in a normative Ashkenazic or Sephardic congregation. There is the awareness that they are in exile still, even to this day. And how do you operate in exile in the world with those that you're in exile amongst, right? So it's not a message that would be foreign to, and when I say normative, just non-Black Jewish congregation, right? It
Right.
would be normative to say, hey, we're in exile, right? How do we engage with exilic life? And how do we look forward to the homeland? That's why this type of message doesn't match them calling themselves a temple. That's why I think it might have just been a news reporter referring to them as a temple, because they seem to be looking towards returning home, right? That the exile will come to a close at some point, theologically.
Yeah. And, for the Christian, my position is it's not an attachment to a particular place, but for the Christian, we are nonetheless, like Avraham, pilgrims passing through. And so this place is also not our home. There's the heavenly Jerusalem. So the Christians, we also have to ask ourselves, like, how do we function in that society and in that place? I have 3 more clips I'm going to play from their 67th anniversary that took place a couple years ago, and then I'm going to play a commercial. Then we're going to get into that document. So it's going to get a little more technical, folks, but just hold on. I got a few more video clips for you.
A new congregation. In fact, the story goes at first that Rabbi Yirmiyahu had.
So here he's talking about the actual founding of them. There's a little bit of history from the group itself. And apparently some of the essentially star pupils of Wentworth Matthew, they went out and found this work that began because they wanted to do something not just in Harlem. So
the story goes at first that Rabbi Yirmiyahu had started a congregation with one of his colleagues, Rabbi McLeod, in Harlem. And then there was a need for growth in Brooklyn. And so there were those who decided to go to Brooklyn, and Rabbi was going to take that step and leave the comfort of Harlem, where the foundation of our community started back in 1919, and branch out and move into Brooklyn. So in 1954, they founded B'nai Adat, and then by 55, they moved from Harlem to Brooklyn to 131 Patchen Avenue. Rabbi Yisrael was a World War I and a Depression child. If you understand, he grew up in those times and those seasons. And when they came to Harlem from the South, they encountered the great late Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, Alav Shalom.
And so that name is important. Notice also how they call him Chief. That's something what you see within Hebrew Israelism. But we're talking about the founder of the Commandment Keepers in 1919, Wentworth Arthur Matthew. And I have, I think, one of his audio lectures on my YouTube channel. It's a rare audio, but I believe I've got it on there. And he's very influential. Now, Crowdy was before him. Christian was before him by about 20 years. But in New York, really the fountainhead of a lot of stuff that got established later on really seems to be Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew there. Any comment on that before I play some more clips from this talk?
Yeah. When you talked about the rabbi that had passed, I think he said Ahava Shalom, which is not, I'm not used to hearing that as a way to speak of those that have passed on. Usually they say Zichron Livracha, may his memory be blessing, or may he be remembered for a blessing. He's saying Ahava Shalom, like love and peace, right?
Oh, okay.
Which is a little different, right? It's a little different of a feel. It does get that urban type of flavor in there, love and peace, for the man who came before us, who stabbed, it has a more of an urban feel to it. So I don't know if there's anything to that, or if they got that from a less popular Jewish group that they came into contact with. But it just seems like a different way to speak of someone that's passed on before. Usually you would say Zikron Livracha, like may his memory be a blessing, right? So it's a little different way to refer to the one that has passed on before him.
Fascinating. All right, let me see next clip here.
Oh, Alav HaShalom. Okay. Mr. Evac said Alav HaShalom. Okay, I thought he said Ahavav Shalom. Thank you for that, Mr. Evac. Appreciate you.
Is that a guy? Is that one of the folks from your channel?
No, I'm not familiar with the name. He said.
Well, shout out to Mr.
HaShalom.
Shout out to Mr. Evac, who's got
Mr. Evac. Appreciate that. He heard it better than me.
Hey, they got the ninja ears.
Thank you, Evac.
Here. Yeah, stick around.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right, here we go. Next
clip.
Yeah,
and they
for
were
sure.
in this group, and they saw the building that we now inhabit on Green and Patchen, and it was a boarded up synagogue. It had been a synagogue for hundreds of years, and it was a boarded up synagogue because gentrification was taking place. And so they got down on their knees, they tell me in this story, and they prayed and they asked the living
Elohim to help them get this building. By 1967, they had purchased B'nai Adat from its previous owners, B'nai Jacob Joseph, and so they purchased the congregation. And
you hear the name B'nai Jacob Joseph? That's a previous group. It'd be interesting for someone to look that up and see who they are if they're still around. But next clip. Oh, okay. So that's all the clips there from that I was trying to play. So I'm going to play a commercial, and then when we come back, we're going to look together at their Siddur. It should be very interesting when we come back. We're going to be taking a look at that. So don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. This is Street Apologist Live, hanging out with Rabbi Eduardo, and very pleased to have him on. Subscribe to his channel. Here we go.
You look at the early pictures, Vocab Malone, whose shirt I'm wearing, Urban Theologians, big shout to you. Bring out this reality that it was the early black Jews in Harlem, black Judaism, that gave birth black Hebrew Israel, and One West brand and variation of it.
Check out this shirt.
Hit it. Look at that. Urban Theology. Yeah. Oh, that's hot, bro. Look at that.
So this is the Urban Theologian.
Urban Theologian, there it is.
Urban Theologian shirt. I'm trying to let you be able to see it. All right, we're back on Street Apologist Live. Tell people about when you were on with the one and only Ruslan. What did you guys talk about? Because that's what that clip was from, the first clip I just showed of you.
That was a good time, man. You know, we were talking about the differences between Messianic communities and some of the other communities and what separates it from Hebrew Israelites and that sort of thing. And Jewish identity and just really being one in the body of Messiah and all those good things. It was cool, man. He's got a really awesome studio. I learned a lot when I went out there too. Just the technical stuff, you know, how to do things.
Fascinating.
He's helpful. So it was a good time, good time, good time.
Well, tell everybody what we're looking at. Explain. Now, I'm the one who found it. Congratulations to myself. But tell everyone what we're looking at. Explain what it is, if you could.
So this is their Siddur B'nai Adat Kol Beit Yisrael. So this is the children of Israel, the sons of the congregation of all the house of Israel, right? So this is their Siddur and their songbook, which is interesting. You know, there are Jewish songbooks. There is a Siddur. The Siddur is basically the prayer book. This seems to be their prayer book throughout the week, and it seems to be their weekly one and the one that they use for Shabbat. So for the Sabbath day.
All right.
So it might just be the one for the week. So let's go down. Yeah.
Are you ready? You ready to take a look at this and explain people what we are looking at? All right. So, if I don't know if there's any particular pages you want to look at, this is the beginning. This Siddur is a compilation of the standard Siddur, but what standard do you think they mean? I wonder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, you know, I did watch a few of their videos. I did notice that they had the Art Scroll Siddur on the table. So Art Scroll is like the big American wing of the ones who put out a lot of Jewish texts. They put out the most popular modern editions of the Talmuds, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem Talmud. So they did have on the table the Art Scroll Siddur. They make it in the Ashkenazic version and the Sephardic version. So could that be the standard one? Possibly. I think what's most interesting is not the same things they did, but some of the differences that they took off. Right.
Notice copyright 1969 copyright.
Yeah. That's probably even before Art Scroll. Honestly.
You think so?
So Kohen Levi ben Yisrael. The usage of the wa for the vav is really fascinating to me, and that stands out right away. The only Jewish community that I know that still pronounces the vav like a wa is going to be the Yemenite Jews. Because they're very closely affiliated with Arabic. In their reading tradition, the Yemenite Jewish reading tradition, they read the Hebrew along with the verse from the Aramaic translation. So they're used to pronouncing the vav, the letter vav in Hebrew, as a W. They pronounce it as a wa. So normal Ashkenazi Judaism, even Sephardic, would say Kohen Levi ben Yisrael, but he's saying Kohen Lewi ben Yisrael. That's a significant difference. Because they don't claim to have an interaction with the Yemenite community, so I don't know where they're getting a W from for the vav. I would be interested in asking him about that.
Yes, indeed. All right. So here's the table of contents. If you notice anything, they're pretty standard.
Yeah, I mean, it all looks pretty standard. You know, they have the Shachrit, they have the early morning service, the Mourner's Kaddish, the 136th Psalm, Baruch She'amar, Ashrei. I mean, all these are basically all the normal prayers that are part of there. I mean, they have the Amidah. Can we go to the 52nd page real quick? Is that okay? To go to the Amidah?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I'll know if it's a weekday one or if it's just a Shabbat one.
Oh, really? Okay. 52nd page. Oh, I wonder if it's. It may not be 52 on the PDF, so I may have trouble finding it.
But they should say their page. They should say their page number on the bottom, though.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully.
Of whatever. Yeah.
I'll go to 52 in this and see where it lands us. Okay. Let's see. There we go. We are on page 52. Okay, it lines up. Is this what we're looking for?
Yeah.
Amidah?
Yeah. So, all right. So this whole thing, Adonai, Siftai, Tiftach, you know, Lord, open my mouth that I can declare your praise. Okay, that's basically normative. Bless you, Lord God, God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So that's down. All right, let's go down a little bit more. Melech Hoser. Okay, that's normative, right? Atagibor Le'elam Adonai. So that's the second blessing. Basically, the Amidah. Sephardic Jews call it the Amidah. Ashkenazi Jews call it the Shemona Esrei, which are the 18 blessings, the 18 benedictions. On Shabbat, you only really do 3 of them. You don't do all of them because you don't really want to be asking God for things on Shabbat. You just want to magnify him. So if we have all 18 blessings here, then this is probably their weekday, has their weekday in it also. So let's see.
You want to go to the next page?
Let's go to the next one. Yeah, let's go to the next one.
All right. Next.
So Michamocha, okay.
Here, let me go to the top here. There you go.
Yeah. So that's the end of the second blessing. Let's go down to the third one. Who is like thee, O Lord? Let's go down. Yeah, let's keep going down. Yeah, so raise the dead. Or Nick, okay, let's go to the next one. I'm just skimming the pages on it. It's hard to see because it's a little belittle.
Sorry about
okay,
that.
keep going. Now it's then with the noise of great rushing, mighty in songs. All right, let's go down from the place shine forth, O King. Let's go to the next one. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all
trying
right.
to just go through this one real quick. I'm trying to see. You can stay at the holy name is holy. Yeah. Okay. Bless you, Lord God, holy God. Okay. Go down for me real quick. I'm just skimming it. Trying to see where the next one is. Rejoice in the giving. Next one, please.
All right. There we are.
Yeah, it seems like, there seems to be changes inside of here from what I'm familiar with, right? Seems to be different. And you know what else I noticed too? When I was listening to the thing, they pronounce the divine name.
Oh, they do?
They call it Yahweh. They say Yahweh.
Well, that's kind of different.
That's really different. So, yeah, that's really different. So basically, you know, in rabbinic congregations, they would say Adonai or Hashem.
Yeah. Who says?
But look,
who says Yehovah?
That was in the one of the streams, one of the videos that you sent me.
Really? But I wonder, like, who would say that? Is there anybody within?
No, nobody would.
Yeah,
Nobody within normative Judaism would say that.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. Let's see where it finishes off at.
All right. Next page. We're on page 57. To the Roman Catholics, this is like maybe roughly equivalent to a missal. To the missal you might have in the Roman Catholic service. Okay, here we are.
Yeah, I would say that. Let me see. Yeah.
I'm just trying to give people a point of reference there.
Yeah.
And of course, is it standard for everything to be transliterated like how it is?
Yeah, some do. Definitely the conservative synagogues do have their sidurs that translate it. So I can show you.
So just taking a look at this, a little bit of analysis, everybody, is what we're doing. Okay, you got a siddur?
So this is a conservative siddur, right?
Okay.
And they only have the transliteration in some places, like around the Mourner's Kaddish. It's going to be hard to see, but around like the Mourner's Kaddish, other places. But in most of the liturgy, they're not going to literate it, right? They're not going to transliterate it.
Hold on.
So they're transliterating.
I'm going to make it.
I'm
going to make it where you can where you're larger. Just go ahead. Just give me 1 second, and okay, there you go. Oh, look at that. Oh, that looks great.
Yeah. See that? So this is, you might not be, my lights might be too bright. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it, but this is a conservative siddur. It does have some parts that are transliterated around the Kaddish, Mourner's Kaddish, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's not the Shema is transliterated. Oh, you can't see it's too bright, sorry. But the Shema is transliterated other than that. But if you looked at an Orthodox Siddur,
check it out. Rabbi Eduardo's taken over. He's taken over Street Apologists Live.
see, Orthodox Siddur. Let's see. So none of this is going to be transliterated. You can't really see this too white, but none of this is really going to be transliterated, you know, in the Art Scroll Siddur. So, yeah, and then even like if you look at Koren, which is like the main publishers of the modern Orthodoxy, they don't have anything really transliterated. You know, sorry you can't see it, but
is it all just
they don't
in
have
Hebrew?
any of this
All in
stuff.
Hebrew?
It's all just in Hebrew and English, right? So, you know, to have transliteration, look, a lot of Messianic congregations use transliterations because a lot of people go into the congregation don't know Hebrew, right? So it is part of what we will call these emerging Jewish communities to need transliteration as part of being able to bring the people into the usage of Hebrew. It just kind of is what it is, right? Also, you'll find that in traditional synagogues, there's a lot of readers and then repetition in the liturgy, where in these congregations, it seems like everybody's participating in everything that's going on. So,
good insight. Good insight. We greatly appreciate your insight here, my friend. Shout out to the live chat.
man.
I see Sister Abi. Sister Abi says, we are not Jewish, but Israelites. Sister Abi, are you affiliated at all with the congregation or maybe with the Tanakh only practice? I'd be curious if that's the case. Let me know if you're up for that. Lily says, why don't they transliterate? I would think it'd be helpful in learning the Hebrew language. Question for you.
So you got to think, you've got to think about it like this. When you're raising your children up in a synagogue, they grow up around the language. They learn it when they're little growing up, right? So normative traditional rabbinic Judaism doesn't really proselytize. So most of the people who are part of the community learn it while they're growing up. There's no need for transliteration. In Messianic congregation, you have people coming to it that might have been distant from Judaism, maybe people who weren't brought up very religious, so then they transliterate. Same thing with these type of communities, right? You're not having people, as many that are being brought up in it. It'll be interesting to see how many people actually are the second and third, fourth generation. And at that point, they still have not learned Hebrew literacy in a very well point that they're teaching to their children at young ages, right? You would think that would be important to do. So it's just interesting to see how they're constructing their congregations. It's not a knock. It's just kind of, interesting to think about.
Right. Well, I know that that they have some form of a school. I don't know if it's how many people are in it now, but my understanding is they have some form of school. Yondell says, is the rabbi Spanish?
Yes, I am.
Now, when you say Spanish, when you say Spanish, what do you mean by that?
So my family is Spanish from Spain, Portugal, and then Puerto Rico. So my family came from.
Apparently, some people know your background because they're answering for you. Some of these questions
that's my mother. That's my mother-in-law.
Oh, hey, okay. Well, hey, shout out to the mother-in-law. We'll have to give her a round of applause. There we go. All right. Okay, so just taking a look at this, shout out to Nick Quint, New Testament theologist as well, and Zion Bound, and of course D-New and Nate 2 D2. Got some great people in the live chat. Please make sure that you hit that button. Rick Vaughn, going back to something you said previously, said a quick keyword search of their website doesn't use the word temple that I could see, even in the building info. So it sounds like probably not, as far as that question that you asked earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Old School Saint says, interesting to see the apparent outreach of this group. Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn are very insulated and isolated. What do you think?
Yeah, they are.
Because,
yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, yeah, look, I think we're dealing with a group that has been very much persecuted everywhere that they've gone. So they've become very insular and very afraid of the outside. And that's essentially what it is. But that's not all of Judaism. The ultra-religious Jews are just the ones that everybody knows because they're most prominent when you're walking down the street, right? But there are other modern Orthodox that would have a ball cap on that you wouldn't even know they're Jewish because you're not seeing their Orthodox fringes hanging out. They've got them tucked in. They're wearing jeans. They're walking around New York City on the subway. You wouldn't know they're modern Orthodox Jews or conservative. And even a lot of Sephardic Jews are more traditional, right? So they may not be outwardly wearing the kippah, wearing the yarmulke, wearing the fringes and all that stuff, but they've got a ball cap on. They're going outside. They're living a normal life, and you wouldn't realize it. So it's not all of it, but it's some of it, right?
Fascinating. We have Sister Abi says, and I had talked to her previously. She says it was a beautiful place. So maybe you've been there, Sister Abi. If so, I'd love to hear your thoughts and experience. She says, I am familiar with the congregation. And Jeremy H. says, literally came here while I was waiting for Rabbi's stream, not knowing he was going to be here. So you got a live going on later today, bro?
Yeah, at 9:30. 9:15.
Oh, nice. All right, we'll have to hurry up and wind up then.
No,
Anything
good,
else
man.
with the Siddur you wanted to look at?
Look, I think it's really interesting that they don't have the korbanot in the recitation of what they're doing, which is really interesting, because that's really a lot of conservative Jews take away the readings of the korbanot, which, maybe it's just because it's Shabbat, but I think that's interesting. The transliteration all over the place, like we said, is really interesting. It seems like it's tailored for a community that doesn't have a high level of Hebrew literacy. So, that's the things to notice about it. The usage of what is, quote, how did they phrase it? The regular Siddur. What did they say? The normal Siddur? Did they say?
I don't remember.
How did they phrase it? The normal. They said we're borrowing from like the normal
standard. Yeah,
standard. Yeah. That's intentional, right? That's intentional to borrow from the standard Siddur because, they view it as something that's authoritative, but they still believe that they have the authority to mold the Siddur, right? And so what they think is right. So it just shows they're borrowing from what they would consider normative Judaism, but still believe that they have authority over their congregation to do what they feel is right with it, which is fascinating.
All right, no doubt. I'm going to show a little bit of literature from the group. This is different things that have been collected. These are publicly available. I know that not all these can be seen, but if you look at this stack of papers, you'll see one thing that says International Israelite Board of Rabbis. So the folks who've kind of come out of what Wentworth Matthew was doing there have established something called the International Israelite Board of Rabbis, and that's something that Capers Fournier is with, and some people may know him for that. And there you see a 95th anniversary Siddur, a unity Shabbat. It's something they still do. Then there in the front, you see that is Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthews there with Torah scroll. So I just want to show a couple pictures that I have. This is a fascinating thing. This is when they, at Commandment Keepers, they're celebrated. They're here. Let me make this smaller so people can see all the picture here. I'm going to make this really, really small. Just a second. You can see there, this is a commemorative program for Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew. What about the idea of Chief Rabbi? Is that something you would catch in standard
Yeah, I mean, so
Judaism?
so there are chief rabbis. There's chief rabbis of Africa. There's chief rabbis of different continents and areas. I mean, so there are always chief rabbis. And then you have chief rabbis of different sects, right? So you could have the Ashkenazic chief rabbi, the Sephardic chief rabbi, over areas geographically. So it's normative to do that, so if they view themselves as, being an Israelite branch of Judaism, right, the Israelites, and that they have a chief rabbi, one that's the head over the other rabbis, then it would be totally within normative Judaism to have that.
Notice how in this graphic that's been created that you have at the bottom of the foundation there, Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew. By that, they're saying that he's the one that sort of brought back this knowledge and information, and all these groups they're showing there are sort of his ideological children, if you will. Do you see that the graphic? I'm trying to make it as big as possible here.
Yeah, and those what are these? The names of the congregation?
Yeah, these are different groups. And notice at the very top of the branch what it says: Hebrew Israelites around the world. So, I understand what they're saying, and it's true. There's a lot around the world. I don't think they're taking credit for all of them because, of course, then you'd really have to get into Crowdy and Christian. And notice the full name of the Commandment Keepers on the bottom. I don't know if you guys can see this. The Commandment Keepers, Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation of the Living God, Pillar and Ground of Truth. That name is something that William Christian and William Crowder used, that full name. And so it shows the connection there, because usually people just know them by the commandment keepers. Now they're almost pretty much gone. So we're talking about the parent group of this organization. That's what we're getting at here when we discuss this, when we discuss B'nai Adath Kol Beth Yisrael. And some people may know Beth Shalom B'nai Zaken. That's where Rabbi Capers Fournier is at. And of course, he is Michelle Obama's cousin, to those who don't know. So we're just kind of learning some Hebrew Israelite history here together. And you can see, these different ceremonies that they had going on. And they do like a biography of Wentworth, Arthur Matthew, and a number of other things there. And the idea is, hey, you need to know your history there. Never forget the bridge that brought us safely over the boundaries of our ignorance. So there's the idea of like waking up type of thing. And there's the
question though. So
yeah.
when's this dated from? When's this dated from though?
What we were looking at, that was from 2017, June 2017, 98th anniversary.
Yeah, so that's different than what we have in the Siddur in the 60s, right? Because we have people being called Ben Levi now, not Ben Lewi.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe. I don't know. Maybe some variations, as it were. So this is from the website blackjews.org. And, someone earlier was complaining, but the website blackjews.org is ran by adherents, and they're okay to call it blackjews.org. It has a lot of information and history about practitioners. And so Rabbi Yeremiah Yisrael began life as Julius Wilkins, used the name Wilkins in the early part of his rabbinic career with Kahol Beth B'nai Yisrael and later with B'nai Adath Kol Bet Yisrael. By the 1950s, or 60s, he used the same name Yisrael, which he is now best remembered. And so this is the founder of the group. Came from North Carolina, most likely, Harlem. Grew up between World War I and Depression. That's when there was the Great Migration. A lot of people came during that time. His mother was a member of the Commandment Keepers. Notice the full name again, Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation. Because people got to understand, in the beginning of Black Judaism in Harlem, there was a struggle, to be honest with you, about how to directly tie this back. And so what they did is they settled on the Ethiopian connection. Over time, that's really eased out, because people basically said we don't kind of need that. It was sort of a way to get legitimacy, because okay, there's something there prior that is on the African continent. And so you can see it right there in the full name. Founded by Rabbi W.A. Matthew in 1919, located at W87 West Lenox Avenue. Many of the early members of the Commandment Keepers were followers of Marcus Garvey, including Rabbi Matthew's teacher, Rabbi Arnold J. Ford. And then it goes on, talks a little about some very interesting stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have time to read all the biography, some interesting highlight sections as well. And so really, today, guys, understand this is sort of history. Check this out. They're into sort of the unity things. Notice one of the flags that's on there. It's Israel. You know what I mean? So there's not an anti-Israel group. In fact, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see this real quick? I want to show you something that you might find very interesting. Who was a guest speaker once there at the congregation? Someone that may surprise you. You know who the president of the ADL is, right?
I do, but I don't remember his name.
Well, let me show you here. I'm going to hold this up. This is on my phone. It may not focus. That's Jonathan Greenblatt. Yeah, it's not going to want to focus. I might, but basically on there. You know what? Let me try a different camera. I got this. Let me see if that is that not going to focus either. Well, anyways, the head of the ADL actually spoke with their congregation, which that's kind of interesting, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So they're not, as they have an interesting relationship, basically. So I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but we're learning a little bit of history here today. And what are some final takeaways you would like to give to the audience, especially maybe an appeal from a Messianic Jewish person to the Tanakh-only viewers of this program? If you could say something to them briefly as we end this, my friend.
Yeah, so I'll say one thing to those that are believers, right, and those that are on this side of the Christian side of things. We can't paint with a broad brush all of these different groups. I think they all have different beliefs and perspectives, and They may all, have a root in some sense and some similarities, but I think we need to do our due diligence, like our brother Vocab shows us, to really dig on into these things, because I think there are differences, right? And some of these differences are huge in the way we can view these different groups. And with that being said, if you are a Tanakh only person, I encourage you to look deeply into the scriptures and to really approach it with an open heart, open spirit, because when you look into that Tanakh, we see Messiah Yeshua, the King of Israel, who came as prophesied by the scriptures at the time that he was supposed to come. It's so insane right now. Vocab, we're celebrating the week of unleavened bread, the feast of unleavened bread, Passover. Yeshua indeed is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, who came at the time that he should have. So if you are a person who is a Tanakh only, the Tanakh only cannot bring redemption and fullness. The scriptures from Genesis all the way to the end of 2nd Chronicles always looks forward to the coming of the Messiah, who is Yeshua, who is Jesus of Nazareth. And if anyone who is a Tanakh only Israelite out there who would love to discuss these things in a loving, calm way, I'm open to discuss those things, discuss the prophecies, discuss the scriptures, discuss the Hebrew of the passages, and reason together about Yeshua, Jesus, truly being the Messiah of Israel and of the whole entire world. And salvation is found in no other name. So so that's there for any person who is interested in engaging with that.
Amen, brother, and thank you very much. Appreciate that on Street Apologetics Live.